Hello, darlings, and welcome. My name is Tanya, aka Gardner Gray, and welcome to Front Yard Food with Gardner Gray. And those of you who have seen videos on my channel may realize that I have changed the name of the channel. I had previously called this Gardner Gray Farms because I quite frankly did not know what to call it. But after last year and some of the changes that I decided to make with how I am growing my garden, I did decide that that was going to be the way I went. I'll give you just a little bit of backstory on me, and that's kind of what I wanted to do here, is come back on YouTube and just sort of retell my story and start new. So those of you who are new here, and unless you are very closely acquainted with me, you probably are, because I am new here. I am growing a garden in Middle Tennessee. I'm classified as, I think, zone 6A, maybe B. I'm sort of on the line there, I believe. And growing a garden is something that I have wanted for my entire adult life. And I've just never been in a position to where I had the opportunity to do so. That changed in about 2019. I finally was like, you know, I've got the space, the place to do it. We are on about 5.5 acres in Middle Tennessee. And there was a perfect patch of land in my property that was just fenced off and just screamed to have a garden grown in it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to grow a garden for the first time. I grew up raised around gardens, getting to experience that garden fresh tomato, those garden cucumbers. And it was something I always wanted to be able to do myself. So I was very excited to get the opportunity. I did what a lot of people do. I ran out to the big box stores. I bought some seeds and started some plants, and they grew. And it blew my mind, because I was always one of those people who said, oh, I can't grow anything. I can kill a fake plant. Yes, I have done it and watched a fake plant fall apart. So I'm a black thumb. And these plants, when I put the seeds in the dirt, actually grew. And I was so excited. I worked really hard tending that area of land. I tilled it up and did all the things, and I put the plants in the ground. I started harvesting some cucumbers out of it, which were amazing. That first cucumber that I pulled out of my very own garden and ate was, to this day, probably the best cucumber I have ever had, and I was so excited for it. As things started to grow, I planted squash, cucumbers, melons, corn, all that stuff out there, and I was outside watering that garden one day, and I noticed that it looked like something had been in the garden and kind of trampled down a couple of my cucumbers, and I was like, well, it's okay. There were some horses on our property, and I thought, well, maybe one of the horses got in there. And then I turned around and I went to water my corn, and there was no corn. And this corn was a little over waist high, which on me is not very high, admittedly, but it was gone. And so I looked some more and realized that my entire garden had been trampled down by horses. It was tragic. I did get, I think, a couple of tomatoes and a couple peppers, and I got several cucumbers out of that garden, so that was good. And then we fast forward to 2020, and we all know 2020. The pandemic came along, and it hit everybody hard. And I remember 2020 was the first year that I was able to take my children on a vacation. And we had decided to go from Tennessee to Colorado, driving, and made some stops along the way to see a few sites and stay in a couple other states. But ultimately, you know, we had gone to vacation in Colorado, and that while we were there is where we heard that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, had started to hit America and was moving very fast. Schools started closing down. All the toilet paper started flying off the shelves. And this was a 10-day vacation that we had planted. Pardon me, the gardener in me is showing. Had planned, and of course, you know, you empty out your refrigerator before you take a vacation like that. So there was no food really in the house for us to come home to. And as we were making our way back home, there was no food in the grocery stores. And for the first time in my life, I saw empty grocery store shelves. And it hit me so hard because I had 6 kids. Yes, you heard that right. I have 6 children, 4 from a previous marriage, 2 from my current. And I was bringing these 6 kids home, and I was not sure if I was going to be able to feed them. I remember stopping at every little Dollar General and little store that we could find on the way home to grab whatever I could get my hands on. I remember finding toilet paper and a hole-in-the-wall gas station in, I think, Arkansas on the way back. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. So I wanted to ramp up my gardening endeavors. And in doing so, and even when I started with that first garden, I remember going to YouTube and looking up some videos with some advice. And if you have gardened at all, and if you're on my channel, I'm sure that you already know who I'm about to be talking about. The first videos I came across were from Jessica at Roots and Refuge Farm here on YouTube. If by some crazy chance you've never seen Jessica or Roots and Refuge, please go check them out. They're amazing. She is the most inspiring person on so many aspects, not just gardening. But I remember I watched a couple of Jess's older videos where she showed how she potted her plants, how to up-pot, how to start her seedlings, how to separate seedlings. And she kept talking about heirlooms, and I dug through more of her videos, of course, and spun off watching Jill at Whispering Willow Farm and The Roads and just a bunch of other ones. And I remember listening to her talking about these heirloom things, and she was obsessed with tomatoes, which I'm obsessed with garden tomatoes. And then I started watching her garden tours, and she started showing off these like wild colored tomatoes. And until then, I mean, all I knew was what was available at the store: red tomato, yellow squash, green cucumber, just your basics. And she showed me all these neat things, and I'm like, whoa, that's really cool. Like, I didn't know that was, you know, that you could grow like a yellow tomato or a green tomato. And she mentioned Baker Creek, where she sourced a lot of her seeds, and M.I. Gardner, who I also follow here on YouTube and absolutely adore. And so, just in curiosity, because, you know, I wanted to find a purple tomato, I got onto Baker Creek's website. And my world was rocked by what I saw. There were so many things that I never even dreamed existed when it came to gardening. So I'm looking through all these, and not only are there purple tomatoes, but there are black tomatoes and green tomatoes and pink tomatoes and striped tomatoes and all of these orange tomatoes and all of these just wild looking things. If you've ever seen a Brad's Atomic Grape, I don't even know how to describe that other than it looks like a June bug to me. And, you know, peppers, the same thing, purple peppers, orange, all these different flavor profiles. And it sparked something in me that I just went nuts. And another thing that Jess uses to encourage people is, you know, you do this and you garden and you grow these heirlooms, and you are growing things that you are not going to get to experience any other way than to grow them in a garden, because you can't go to the store, or most of the time even to a farmer's market, and find these varieties. So fast forward, 2020 garden. I set up my back patch of land and grew my things. I built some trellises and grew my cucumbers on them, and it was great. I had a hard time maintaining it, but I still got some harvest off that. I got to experience a Dr. Witchy, and I believe it's pronounced Dr. Wyches, but again, if you watch Jess, it's a Dr. Witchy's yellow tomato, and the experience. I remember getting the Dr. Wyche's yellow tomatoes and a black brandywine tomatoes, and it was so in love. Silver slicer cucumbers was another one, and it was great, but I didn't get to harvest to my fullest potential in that 2020 garden. And it was hard to get back there because, like I said, I'm over here on about 5.5 acres. And this patch of land, the way it's set up, it's sectioned off. And we have what we call our backyard, our backyard, and the backyard. And my garden patch is in the backyard. And I remember hearing, you don't want your garden to be far away from your house and inaccessible, because out of sight, out of mind. And I was like, nah, but this is my good garden location. This place was meant for the garden. But the fact that I could have gotten so much more out of that garden, it should have kind of been a first clue. And then we get to 2022, last year. I started all my seeds, and I'm going to ramp it up, and I'm going to grow all this stuff, and it's going to be absolutely fabulous. And it was not absolutely fabulous. Let me tell you. 2022 was such a hard gardening year. And most of my other friends, I've got a little bit of a following over on TikTok, and, talked to a lot of other gardeners through that, and some local gardeners here close to home. And a lot of people struggled. And I saw some that had bounty out of their garden and cheered them on and was so excited for them. But the weather went crazy. It was crazy cold snap, crazy storms. I had a whole greenhouse full of plants get blown over. And I mean, I didn't even have anything even remotely growing until like June. So I got some okra, I got some green beans, I got one tomato off of my tomato plants, and I was excited for that. I think it was an Abe Lincoln, and it was delicious. But like everything, it was disaster. Everything kept dying, and nothing was growing. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a bummer. I'm devastated. I'm like, maybe I don't even want to do this anymore. And I was like, no. And then trying to get back there, it just wasn't feasible. And again, referencing Jess, and you're going to hear me do that a lot. If you follow anything that I say here on this channel, you're going to hear me talk about Jessica a lot. Her favorite comment is, turn your waiting room into a classroom. And I was sitting out here on my front porch where I'm at right now on my swing, and I was thinking about that, turn your waiting room into a classroom. Okay, well, what can I learn? What can I do so that, I may not be getting a lot of harvest, but it's not going to be completely null this year. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put these couple of plants that I have left in my front yard. You know what? I'm just going to do it. And that is what I did. I started tearing things down and building up my garden in my front yard. And I put up the first trellises, and I was like, I was giddy. I was like, this is beautiful. I can step out onto my front porch or sit on my front porch swing, um, and see my garden. And it astounded me. So it completely changed my directions. I've still got a bunch of stuff I have to tear out in the back, but I tore down the whole back garden. I'm tearing down the whole back garden, moving it all up here into my front yard, right off my porch where I can see it. Because like, and I know in neighborhoods and with HOAs, and sometimes you can't really do that, but I'm out in the country, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to be out in the country. It's not about having the pretty manicured lawn. I want a beautiful garden where I can grow something lovely, and I want to be able to see it and experience it on a daily basis, even if I'm not out there currently walking through it or picking vegetables. So I am building a front yard garden. This will be my second year of that. I started it last year and was able to get the few things I did get to harvest out of it, and I'm continuing it on this year. So very excited to bring you guys along with me. I'll show you a couple of the things that I have done if y'all are interested in seeing. Now, most of what you're about to see is probably nothing new, especially if you have seen my channel. I think you probably saw the video where I said I'm tearing down my garden. Some of these were in the back garden, but this is kind of what's already going on this year. So a little kind of mini garden planning tour, maybe. And I've still got a lot of cleanup and setup to do, so there's not a whole lot to show you, but here's what I've got so far. Okay, so first off, we got the purple raised beds. I love these, especially my mom's favorite color is purple, and so these always make me think of her when I see them. You can see I tried to do some no-till. This is cardboard that I put down last year when I set these up and built the beds on top of them. I've got mulch that I'm actually going to put down, so I'm going to like reinforce the cardboard and mulch around it so that we can get this grass kind of killed off. Okay, got some radishes growing there. So here's one of my 8x4 foot garden beds. I grew okra in here last year, and I've got like 6 more of these that I'm going to be setting up this year. Here's an example of a very messy and needing tending no dig bed, again with the cardboard and the dirt. I planted a zucchini in here last year, and probably gonna do something similar with that this year. My favorite part of the garden, tomato trellises. I've got one that I put up from last year, and you can see where I did the no dig for it. I'm gonna have, I think, all told 8 of these is my plan. So yeah, that is the story of me starting this little front yard food journey that I'm on, and just honestly wanting to spread a love of the garden, because it is an experience, and the best way to experience it is to do it. I want to help encourage other people to grow food, and we'll get into that more on the whys, and definitely on the hows. I plan to show you guys the good, the bad, the wins, the fails, and the things that work for me and that might work for you. And again, I just appreciate you being here. If you've made it this far through my little ramblings, I thank you so much. So yeah, hit that like and subscribe and follow this journey with me. It's a new one for me. And I'm really excited to share it with whoever wants to listen to it. So, this is Gardener Gray, telling you guys that I hope you all grow abundantly, and I will see you next time.